335th inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame possessed a combination of superior technique, power, and determination. Steve Hutchinson wanted to dominate you. He wanted to maul you, and he did so consistently through his 12 NFL seasons, and it ultimately led him to his rightful place in Canton, Ohio. Steve also has a softer side, one that's easily recognizable to his family and friends. He's a leader in the community and shows loyalty and compassion. The credit belongs to us all, he believes, because the sum is greater than the parts. He proved that on the field as a consummate professional and teammate, and he continues it off the field as a Hall of Fame human being. Hutch, welcome to Great Dane Nation, brother.
What's up? It's a pleasure to be on here. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure to have you, and let me be, well, not the first, but certainly one of your Hall of Fame brothers who wants to, congratulate you. I know you had to wait because of COVID, so you got to savor it a little longer.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool.
It was a longer honeymoon.
It was a longer honeymoon, and I have to admit to you now that when I was listening to your speech last year, I did win some money on you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I figured
I took a little money from Warren Moon.
Nice.
We have these side bets. Who cries first? And I think you choked up a little bit. I'm not trying to be insensitive, but I really appreciate that. I was counting on you, and you didn't disappoint.
Oh,
is that wrong? Is that wrong, Hutch?
Listen, you can buy me a beer with the money with the money you want.
It wasn't very much. Is that wrong? That we're sitting there betting and wagering on.
Well, I mean, how many of those things have you sat through? You got to place a little friendly wager just to keep it interesting, right?
Yeah, I've been to a few. I got in 17. I know you had to wait a little bit as well. I thought too long, but I mean, there's a lot of guys you could argue, man, they should be first ballots. Was there a time when you thought this is not going to happen, or I mean, how surprised were you that you had to wait? Or what was the whole experience like? Because for me, it's frustrating, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it, and the way I describe it is, in the way we did it with David, and I think Jim coming in is going to change the way that the whole knock goes, right? But the way we did it under David was, the process starts in August, the initial ballot, and then it gets whittled down. And as everybody knows, they bring the 15 finalists to the Super Bowl site.
Yeah.
And, every day, every hour of every day that you're down there, that just, the anxiety builds, right? Because ultimately you're down there waiting for 3 p.m. or whatever it is on Saturday, right? The way it was. And you start with a cocktail hour deal on Thursday, and then Friday you have the luncheon, and then it's a long 24 hours that you're sitting. So I think when you don't get the knock and you get the call that Saturday afternoon, the first thing that always went through my mind was, it's 365 days for me to even have a chance to be in this position again. It's not like,
right.
Oh crap, let's we got, all right, let's regroup and try this again in 2 weeks. It's a full calendar year. And then you're hoping, the voters still felt the same way about you to get you to that point. And when I made it the first time as a finalist in Minnesota, we went to that Thursday night deal. And the first time I really met David Baker, I was talking to him briefly at that event. And he kind of said, when you're he starts, David was really good. He had all the stats, and he said, if you make it as a finalist, you've got I think it was an 80-something% chance to get in. Once you make it as a finalist,
Eventually, right? Yeah,
eventually at some point. But, I'll take over 8 out of 10 times, getting in, right? So you knew you had a shot, a really good shot of getting in. And then when you make it, I found out I made it from the 15 to the 10 that year. And then the next year, the next year was the same thing in Atlanta. You made it from the 15 to the 10. And I also knew at that particular year, 2 years there, that first year we had 5 of the 15 were offensive linemen. You had Baselli, myself, Faneca, Kevin Mawai, and then Joe Jacoby was in his last year of eligibility as a modern finalist. So we kind of, nobody made it in that year. We all canceled each other out because with all the votes, and then it was kind of, those log jams occur. We're probably in one now with some receivers, and some new linemen.
Troy Holt,
yeah. So you got the receivers, and then you got the defensive ends. You're going to have a little bit of a log jam there. And that's just the nature of it. That's just the politics and the way it goes. And so, I think once, Joe unfortunately didn't make it on his last year, which I think everybody in that room felt for him because, then you go into that pool of guys that
seniors.
are, forever. That pool never. There's no bottom to that pool.
No. And
unfortunately, and so then the next year was Kevin, and then I had a feeling. I had a strong feeling about Miami. You don't want to get too over confident because then you're just letting yourself down more. But it was a process, and I'll be honest with you, having gone through it twice and not made it, I think when I did make it and got that knock in Miami, and that's I'm from South Florida, it kind of made it extra special. It was it made it all worth it.
So you've had a chance to reflect on it now, and what is a gold jacket? I know what it means to me. I want to hear from you. What does that gold, like the number one thing, what does it mean to you to have a gold jacket now?
I think for me, getting in that gold jacket, the first thing I think of is, I set out to do something a long time ago when I was a young kid, and that's closure to me. Everybody always talks about, wanting to attain a goal. Everybody wants to reach a goal, and a lot of people, aren't afraid to make short-term goals. A lot of people are afraid to make long-term goals because there's a lot that happens in between.
Yes.
For me to set a goal as high as I possibly could for the profession I chose. And that's even going back before I even made it into the NFL. I was a kid, and the odds of me making it through high school healthy and getting a scholarship and playing and having a career in college and then moving on, your odds just fall exponentially every step of the way. Yeah. And so for me to attain that goal, that's just a reminder of me that you can do what you want to do. You just got to be determined. The second thing it reminds me of is, and this doesn't really come about as often until I go to, like we were in LA for the Super Bowl. When you don that jacket and you go to, the Merlin Olsen luncheon, and you see all your brothers there and the guys I looked up to when I was a kid, and the guys I sat there and talked to Dick Butkus for 15 minutes. He's the reason I started playing football, because my mom's from Chicago. I was a Bears fan growing up. The way they played football, just blood, mud, snow. That's how football is supposed to be played. And when you get to see there and you realize I'm in the same club as him, that's what that means. It's you can't buy it. No amount of money in the world can buy that. I don't care if you own Amazon. You're not getting in that club.
It's hard to recognize sometimes and wrap your head around the fact that, and we'll take Dick Butkus since you mentioned him. Here's a guy that basically invented the middle linebacker. And created that position. It kind of gives me goosebumps to talk about, and I know you probably feel the same way.
Right.
There's some legends, and some we've lost, of course. We lose guys every year. That sucks. Yeah. But the ones that are alive, like the Jackie Slater, I know you were a guard, he was a tackle, but nevertheless, you're looking at Will Shields, and we can talk about guards, and I want to get your opinion on that. All these guys that came before you, right, and some that you played with or against, it is kind of mind-blowing, and I know my fraternity is real small. There's two of us, right? Jan and I, and so, that makes it two Heinekens, here we go. Here we go, right? It's an easy one where you guys have a big group. I don't know, I know Bruce Smith did a big 100-sack thing in L.A., You and I had an opportunity to hang out one night. I apologize for the late hours. And by the way, you're not supposed to repeat what takes place the night before at a rookie symposium at the freaking Let's fill our listeners in here. Hutch, what in the world are you doing?
Well, I kind of
man.
dragged my ass into the.
This is proprietary shit, man. Come on.
No, I didn't throw you under
fill
the bus.
everybody
All
in.
I said was,
You
know, it's like when you go to the petting zoo and then the guy says, hey, you can pet all these guys over here, these goats. You can play with these things over here. He's like, you see that guy in the corner? Just, you just stay away from him a little bit. That's kind of what I told you. That's what I kind of told the Rooks.
And they all shook their head. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You dumbass. You should have known better. I don't know how you got up. I mean, that was an early morning for you.
Yeah. That was a 3 coffee morning. A couple of Advil. No, it was fun. Yeah. That was a great night. Yeah, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. You get together. We don't get to see each other near as much as we want.
I know. Yeah, and we never really knew each other, Hutch.
Right.
And that's what's cool about the brotherhood. And the next evening, I got a hold of Tony Pucelli and kind of gave him the same treatment. I don't discriminate.
No, I was impressive because I was sitting in the lobby that morning, the following morning, and I see Pucelli walking through the lobby at the Intercontinental, and he looks like a zombie. And I say, hey, rough night. I said, I know how that goes. I had a big. He goes, oh yeah, I was with Morten. I was like, Jesus. I'm like, I'm still hurting from the night before with Morten.
Next time we'll tone it down a notch.
No, let's crank it up. We'll crank it up.
Crank it up. It's up to you. I'll let you lead. You'll be the pace setter. I'll just try to fasten my seatbelt and follow you. All right, so I want to get your opinion. The Seahawks was absolutely one of your main teams. You get drafted by them. You spent a lot of time there, and here we have Russell Wilson now, who gets shipped off to Denver after having a Hall of Fame type of run in Seattle.
Right.
He wins a Super Bowl. He won the NFC twice. How disappointing is it that a guy like Russell Wilson isn't going to finish his career with Seattle? I mean, it hurts to see a guy like that who's in his prime go play for a different franchise. It happens, but
right,
man, I don't know if I saw that one coming. Did you see that coming? And what's your feelings on that?
The way the game is, today's game is it's, as there's a little bit more of a business aspect to it.
Yeah.
There's a little bit more of a chess game to it.
Yeah.
My goal at the beginning of my career was to play, I wanted to play however long my career was in one spot.
Me too.
Do the Ring of Honor, be in the one spot and call that place home. Unfortunately, for me, I moved teams. I think when you get to where he was 10 years into it, I'm sure he's on one hand, he's probably, disappointed that he couldn't say, I played, I was a Seahawk for life. But at the same time, I'm sure he's happy for the opportunity. I don't know if anybody really saw that coming, but again, I know Seattle, we were down the last few years with picks, and the teams are cyclical, right? I mean, you have a window, you have guys that get older, some guys leave in free agency, and that core group of guys, that window you have to hold that core together, it starts to dissolve. Yeah. And you can't do anything about it. Injuries, contracts, things like that. So I think it was the good thing was, it sounds like it was mutual. I think Denver was a place that Russell and his family were looking forward to maybe going as a fresh start. And I know Seattle is probably happy to get a bunch of picks back and really start trying to from the ground up, trying to build that core back and find that next window in a short amount of time.
Yeah, and I think having Elway in Denver probably might have helped that decision for Russell as well, having a guy that's a Hall of Famer, who's won Super Bowls.
And don't forget, Peyton lives there too.
Peyton lives in Denver, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of guys you can lean on, right, for wisdom.
Especially when you get to that point in your career, when you maybe when you were younger, you've relied on, twitch and athletic ability to get you out of certain situations, and then when you become older, you've got to kind of have that savvy. Right.
It just becomes the nuances of the game, right?
Right. You've been a student of the game your whole life. Now you got to kind of put that to work. And I can't really escape from this situation anymore. So I'm going to make sure I have, from a quarterback standpoint, I'm going to make sure I have that check down or that hot route, so I don't have to, make the magic happen with my legs and my quickness as much as I did when I was, 23 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So he leaves, and now Seattle's kind of left in a rebuilding mode, like you mentioned, and you got a 70-year-old coach in Pete Carroll. What do you think of the job Pete has done in his tenure in Seattle? And I mean, they got rid of Bobby Wagner too. Don't forget about that.
Yeah,
and
right.
The NFC West is kind of stacked. I mean, that's a tough division. So where do they fit?
I'll tell you what, I've been around a lot of those practices. I've seen Pete in action, everybody says, well, yeah, he's 70. But, honestly, when you watch Pete Walker, even you watch him run around the field at an OTA, he's got just as much energy as those 36-year-old head coaches.
Yeah, you're right.
That's just Pete's deal, and he breeds competition. Everything's about positive energy. Everything's about, I don't care if you make a mistake, just make it 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And, the guys feed off it. They buy into it. And I think Pete likes to have that stable of guys that are willing to run through a brick wall. Not to say older guys can't do it. You just can't run as fast through that brick wall. Right. As far as Pete being 70, I think that's the last thing anybody should worry about as far as his ability to do it. The game certainly hasn't passed him by. If anything, he's in his prime, mentally as a coach, I feel. So, I mean, it's just a matter of how long he wants to do it. And you've seen those guys, Morten. You've seen those guys that they're built to coach. That's what they're made to do. They're made to motivate. They're made to just kind of inspire. And when you take that away from them, that's a lot of times. I'm not saying that's all Pete has, but that's what he wants to do.
Yeah, he's a ball coach, right? Andy Reid, here it comes to mind. And Andy Reid, right? Great motivator, timeless in a sense, And I don't think Pete wants to hear about rebuilding. It's just not in his, that's not his DNA. I mean, I don't think he'll ever use that excuse.
No, you don't want to.
There's no room for it.
Because then you're conceding, right? Then you're conceding. Well, then, if we're rebuilding, that means we're not there. We don't have a shot. And I think regardless, there's a label everybody wants to put on a team. You're a contender. You're right there. You're one hole in your roster away from being a contender, or you're rebuilding. I think that's too black and white. I think there's a lot of parity in our league. Look at Cincinnati. I mean, 2 years ago, Joe Burrow gets hurt. Their offensive line isn't, really they don't have the reputation for being the most solid in the league. They lost some older players on defense, some stalwarts that have been there a long time. And, would anybody going into that season giving Cincinnati a chance to, probably should have won that Super Bowl. And, so I don't think anybody's really as far away from winning it as anybody wants to give them or admit, but again, what's the old saying, right? Any given Sunday.
Yeah, and I think they're going to go after some linemen in Cincinnati, and they're going to shore that up and be really good for the next 3 to 5 years. I see a nice window for the Bengals.
Right. No, they're going to, it's going to come a time in a couple of years when they're going to have to start making some big decisions. You got a receiver core that pretty much anybody in the league would die to have. You got a young quarterback who's obviously talented physically, but he's the guy you want, to have the intangibles as well. So, they're gonna have their bumps in the road trying to keep that core group together, just like any team that has success.
Another team that you played for, the Minnesota Vikings, going through some changes. They get rid of Mike Zimmer. That era's done. Now they got Kevin O'Connell, young guy who just spent a few years working with Sean McVay. So, as a former Vikings player, are you excited about this young offensive mind coming in to work with Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and those guys? What do you make of the Vikings, running it? I mean, Kirk Cousins, $35 million? I was shocked. I have to be honest with you, bro. I don't know.
Well, I was in Indy. I do consulting work. I do the college O-line scouting for the Seattle. So I go to Indy every year, and I was over at the media center one day, kind of talking with some buddies, and Kevin O'Connell had just got done with his press conference, and so he came by with the group of PR guys that I'm really close with in Minnesota, and so I kind of got introduced to him, and over the course of the next couple of days, I kind of ran into him at the hotel, and we had some good little short conversations. But he seems like a guy that's, the thing I like about him that I got off the bat was he's a guy that embraces tradition. He's a guy that I think he understands the franchise he has the reins to, and there's not a franchise I believe in the league that has the history has the same type of history as the Vikings. I mean, you could rattle off for 10 minutes Hall of Famers that wore the purple, and so he understands what he's got, and I think he realizes what that fan base expects. The thing about that is, you go from, like you said, Zimmer, defensive minded coach, right?
Very.
So now you have an offensive minded coach who comes from, that newer system of football, right? That mid wide zone system, a lot of play action, things of that nature. So not only are you changing, from the top down philosophically from a defense to an offensive minded guy, now you're changing specifically offensive, terminologies, philosophy. So there's probably going to be a little bit of growing pains until they get the personnel, for example, offensive line. When you're a team that's, maybe used to running gap scheme, man scheme stuff, you want bigger, wider guys that can kind of move the line of scrimmage vertically, as opposed to now you want guys that maybe not so big, but they have that quickness, to get on an edge, kind of stretch that defense, get that defense tired out, make them cover from numbers to numbers every play. And then, oh, by the way, we're going to, pull it back and we're going to throw that shot to Jefferson, like you said, utilize the tight ends. So, I think there's going to be, I hope they have success early, but I think you'll see a progression, and that's what you're looking for. Year 1 and 2, you want to see. When I got there in 2006, our first year we were 6-10. Mike Tice had just got let go. I came in with Brad Childress, a new GM as well, and so we were 6-10. Then the next year, we were 8-8. Then we were 10-6. Then we were 12-4, and probably should have won the NFC Championship game in New Orleans in 2009, and then had a really good shot of winning the Super Bowl down in Miami versus the Colts. I believe we would have had we matched up well with them. So you want to see that progression in those first couple of years. That gets the team to buy in. Everybody believes, and I thought we did it that way, and I don't see any reason why he can't do that.
And do you feel Kirk Cousins is the guy to get you to the Super Bowl? I mean,
I think.
I know he's getting a lot of criticism, but
he's getting a lot of criticism because at the end of the day, they've by their they've gotten so close so many times, right? I mean, they feel like, man, we're going to turn, they're going to turn the page and they're going to just, kind of just run with it. And then for whatever reason, that team's had a lot of injuries. You lose Dalvin Cook early one year, and that's the best. That's quarterback's best friend is an all-pro running back. Especially in a system where you're relying on the run game to set up the pass. You look at the quarterbacks around the league. You look at his numbers. I mean, he's not that far off from those guys that are doing those things, that are leading those teams deep into the postseason. For whatever reason, it hasn't worked, but maybe that's going to be, again, you go back to, you got a new head coach. It's an offensive minded guy. Maybe he's got the formula to kind of take some of the pressure off his shoulders and make it more of an 11-man responsibility as opposed to a 1.
And you have to figure out how to beat Green Bay and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron just re-upping with the Packers. I mean, let's face it, it's a 2-man race in that division.
Well, I mean, there's a couple divisions where, I think the NFC is one of them where you can't focus on the playoffs. You got to focus on winning the division. You've got to, Detroit's in a, well, we all know Detroit's been in a rebuild for a while, just to use that term that everybody likes to use.
Kind.
Chicago's kind of up and down. They're hot and cold, but if they can ever figure it out and keep consistent, they're a team that's always prided themselves on defense. It's a hard place to play when you're playing in Chicago, and as in December. And same thing with Green Bay. Both those, it's old school. You don't find any worse grass fields than Chicago and Green Bay, especially once November rolls around. So you gotta play on their home turf every year, and you got to figure out a way to eke out a win there and win that division. And he's not, obviously Aaron's not going anywhere anytime soon. Now they lost a big target in Devontae with that trade the other day to Las Vegas, but he seems like he always finds a way to
figures it out.
He figures out a way to make whatever receivers lining up on the outside look good.
You figured out a way to block for some studs. I mean, talk to me about, you blocked for Shaun Alexander, of course, in Seattle, and then you go to Minnesota. You block for Adrian Peterson. Then you go to the Titans, and let's not forget about Chris Johnson.
Right.
So compare the three running backs, their styles. Did it change your blocking, the way you approached it, or was it, hey, I'm going to dominate the guy from across from me? How were those guys different?
I don't think it changed. Shaun and Chris were a little similar from the standpoint where, they had really good vision. Not to say Adrian didn't, but Adrian knew where he wanted to hit the ball. And if I tell people all the time, like, if I'm blocking if I'm trying to, drive block that 3 technique and that ball's supposed to hit, in that gap inside of me in the center. And if I wasn't square, if I had my hips inside, that your kidney's toast, because Adrian's going to
He's running right up your ass. Yeah.
He is running right up your ass, and your kidney is going to take a shot, and he's going to, that guy can't help but fall forward for more than, less than 3 yards. But he also he also had the speed to beat, to take whose job on the defense was to set that edge, and he could make them look silly because he could outrun pretty much anybody in the NFL. Chris and Shaun they had more of they saw the field, from that tight end to that tight end spot. So even though that play was supposed to be designed here, if Shaun saw that backside, and Chris the same way, saw that backside linebacker a little anxious coming over that top, well, there was nothing to hold him.
He's bouncing it.
So, when you're on the backside and you're thinking, hey, all I've got to do is keep this guy from crossing my face, because I know the ball's supposed to go way outside the right tackle. Next thing you know, that ball's cutting right inside of you, as a left guard. So, I think with those guys, you had to be more cognizant of holding those blocks no matter where the ball was designed to go. Whereas Adrian, you wanted to get on that guy, move him, kind of like it looked in the diagram, move him a yard or two off his spot, because that ball was getting hit.
Yeah. I know you're good friends with John Randle, and I spoke with Buselli, had Buselli on a couple of weeks ago, and Tony said the most difficult defensive player to block is a guy that has several things in his arsenal, who just doesn't give you one move, but he gives you a combination, a hybrid, if you will. And John was good at that. So talk to me about, like, who do you think is the most difficult for you to block? Who was it? And what did you get from John? I'm sure you guys shared some trade secrets.
So I tell people all the time, and this is the God's honest truth. My first 3 years in the league was John Randle's last 3 years in the league. We played together in Seattle, and I wasn't around John when he was in year 6, 7, 8 in his prime, but I can't imagine it was much slower than it was, or much faster than he was in year 12, 13, and 14. And so John only has one speed. And it doesn't matter if you're doing a Saturday morning walkthrough, or you're doing a Wednesday 9-on-7, or a Thursday, third down period in team. He had one speed. And so I had to try to figure out how to block that guy. And, Buselli's right. I would say the most difficult guy to block, to Tony's point, is a hybrid, a guy with multiple moves, but a guy that actually knows how and when to use a counter move. See, most of these guys have a go-to move, and if you take that away, they're done. they can't really transition or think. You take them off guard and they kind of get stuck.
Yeah.
A bull
they can't
rusher,
midstream adjust. No midstream
exactly.
adjust.
Yeah. So a bull rusher, you sit down a bull rusher. Well, a lot of times they don't have anything else to go to. They're locked. They're done. You got a guy that likes to get up the gap and swim the B gap. Well, you get your hips over and you get in front of them and you stop that. A lot of times those guys are done. So you watch film, you break down a guy, you see his counter moves. And when like a guy like John, he was so fast with his hands. Like I had to learn, like, I come out of college and, you get a lot of college coaches teach robotic 2-hand punching. Like, all right, well, what you find out is your hands are so used to working in unison. Even if one hand gets knocked down, the other hand goes with it. It's muscle memory. You're always teaching to use things to go in pairs. And so what I found was with John, I had to figure out a way to shoot one hand, have him react to that hand with his, he had a great move of chopping this hand, getting your shoulders down, and at the same time, he's already starting to spin back to the inside because he knew if you got your shoulders turned, your head a little bit forward, your weight was already going this way. He was moving this way, and there was no chance. Plus the fact he wasn't the tallest guy, so he always had leverage to begin with. And so I had to figure out a way to get him to distracted with this hand. He started doing something with this hand. I would come in with my second hand and catch him on the inside, keep him from going back inside. Then by the time he tried to get back to this, then I had my original hand back on him. So it really became a hand battle deal that I had to watch. I had to watch John in slow motion on film to figure out what he was doing. And it took me all of about a year and a half in practice. That being said, by the time I got to Sundays, it was a lot of times it was like, geez, this is easy, because I got to go against him, however many reps a day and one-on-ones and all that stuff. But, there's a lot of great players, I didn't have, fortunately for me, I didn't, being in that division, I didn't really get to play against BY in his prime. Now, don't get me wrong. When I played against BY in San Francisco, his last couple years, he was a hell of a player, and everybody always respected. He was one of the most respected players in the league.
Let's just tell our listeners who BY is.
Oh yeah, so Bryant Young, just got inducted, into the Hall of Fame this last class here a few months ago. Longtime San Francisco Notre Dame guy, and so he was another guy like John that way, technically sound. He had a horrific leg injury that he came back and actually had a hell of a career afterwards. But, like Richard Seymour is a guy that was my class, another guy that just got in the Hall of Fame. He was a guy that shouldn't have been as quick as he was for as big as he was, But, that's the biggest thing, I guess, when you say against guys like Bryant Young and John Randle. It's like they had a plan. They studied, they knew what you were going to do, and they were always constantly working to beat what you were going to do to take away their first move, where a lot of guys don't even realize that's what you need to do.
What do you think of the guard position as it's played today? Is it better, worse, the same? And who's the best guard in your mind right now? Is it Quentin Nelson?
I think
Wyatt Teller?
I think the kid from Indy, Nelson or Zach Martin, they're pretty good guard. They play well. The kid in Dallas. I'll tell you who I think is going to be a very good player for a very long time he'll be in his second year now with Kansas City is Trey Smith. He's a kid taken. He was taken later than he should have been in the draft in 2021. He had some medical issues coming out of college or during college, so that a lot of teams were afraid to take him. But Cincinnati, took the chance, and he started every snap for him. And I think he ended up going to the Pro Bowl this year. But he was a kid I really liked coming out of college. He was big, strong, long, old school, nasty. He just, honestly, it sounds bad in today's society, but if you're going to be a good offensive lineman, especially at the guard and center position, you have to be relentless, and you really kind of need to want to hurt people. I mean, you have to have that mentality, and you have to do it day in and day out and play in and play out. And there's a few guys that play with that mentality that they just want to bury you and they want to make you quit, and they want nothing more than to watch you give up. And you got to have that relentless, because you're playing against a guy like Aaron Donald who's going to do the same thing on the other side, And if I was playing, I've never played against Aaron Donald. He came in the league after I was done, but if I was going to play against Aaron Donald, I would tell our coaches, we've got to make him earn the right to rush the passer, which means I would want to run the ball 35, 40 times right at him. Not to say he wouldn't do good running, being a run defender, but I want to wear his ass out coming off the ball and dictating the pace to him, as opposed to me setting back on my heels and letting him come at me. That's the problem in this league now. It's pass first, and it sets up success for these really athletic guys. These guys are getting stronger, smaller, and faster. On the inside. When I was, kind of when I got in the league, it was the new thing to have, on third down, they'd take the big nose guard and the 3 techniques out, and they'd move defensive ends inside a 3 technique and put another defensive end in, and then they have 4 defensive end in the game. That was kind of like the Baltimore thing to do back in the day. And, so I'm not, as a guard, you're not used to seeing these quick, light guys. Now you got these guys that are moving like that, but they're still 280 pounds. John Randle's, they're shorter. They've got the leverage. So, I think the guard positions change from the standpoint where I think you're seeing better athletes. So the guards have to be better athletes. And
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I think the run game isn't as, what's the word? The run
it's
game.
It's not your go-to. It's not that
go-to.
It's
not
anymore.
A go-to, but even the style of runs are they're more stretch plays.
Yeah.
Where, it's
zone blocking kind of.
Not so much pound a guy into the ground as it is get him to run vertically, and and he has to cover more ground, which I guess in theory you're trying to tire him out. But the way they substitute these guys, you always got fresh guys in there. I just wish I'd like to see teams go back to, even if it's a game plan thing, like let's go at this team. Let's go vertically at this team in the run game and make those.
You wanted them all, guys.
Make those 3 techniques hold up, and then what we want to do is put those guys in the laps of the inside linebackers. So those inside linebackers could never be right. They had to guess just to get the hell out of the way of the double team coming at them.
Sure.
I'm going to guess inside or I'm going to guess outside. And then when you have a running back like Adrian, as soon as you see that guy pick a side, he's hitting that other way. And, that's how football is, designed to be played.
But you're right. The game has changed. It's stretched out. It's guys with speed and space. Denver used to do that zone blocking, and you get Terrell Davis running, and there wasn't a designated gap for him. He could pick and choose off of the zone blocking that happened in front of him. So,
Denver in the 90s was the first team to do that. They were the first team to line up with, a whole offensive line that I think was, other than I think they had 1 tackle that was over 300 pounds. But they were, their center was 270 something pounds.
Yeah.
And that was an anomaly, and it worked, right? They had, a great offensive line coach in Alex Gibbs.
Oh, yeah.
He was a beaut, rest his soul.
Was.
And, but those guys, they were a machine. And like you said, they had a Hall of Fame quarterback, Hall of Fame running back, Hall of Fame receiver, tight end. You got, and then on defensive side, they were stacked too. So, you find a system, you get good at it, and you have an offensive coordinator that knows how to play that chess game with the defense, and you're going to have success.
All right, greatest of all time. I'm going to John Hanna, Gene Upshaw, Tom Mack, Larry Allen, Marshall Yanda, Will Shields, Alan Faniga. I know. Give me your top. You have a top 3, top 1. A guy that suits you. It doesn't have to be.
It's hard to. For me, it's hard to get past Bruce. Because Bruce was a guard, right? And he played it for 20 years, 19 years or whatever it was. But then he also Pro Bowled at every other position on the line.
Yeah, Bruce Matthews.
Yes. And so it's, you got a guy that played my position, did it better than anybody in my opinion. And then he lines up at left tackle in Pro Bowls. And he lines up at center in Pro Bowls. And then the right side. It's just, that's a football player.
That's
Larry Allen was, we overlapped a lot of our career together. Larry was a different human. When you're bench pressing 700 pounds, you can throw guys around like,
good grief. Yeah.
It's like he's a Big Ten lineman playing against, some D3 school somewhere, first game of the year. He's just tossing these NFL guys around like they're little kids.
Ragdolls.
Yeah. John Hanna, obviously, from a time well before, I came around, but watched plenty of film on him. The game was different, but another mauler. I'd have to, it's hard for me to get past Randle McDaniel, guy that was, but I guess, all those guys, there's, to me, Bruce had the most impressive, and for what he was and what he did, anything he was asked to do, I'll just be the best at it, across the board.
Yeah. Hey, you're a U of M guy. I'm a Michigan State guy, but that's not going to keep our love from hitting each other here. But you were privy to the GOAT, Tom Brady. Were you surprised when he retired, and were you equally surprised when he unretired after 40 days? What was your relationship with Tom?
Yeah, so Tom and I were together 4 years in school. He was a year older than me, but we both redshirted, so we were there 4 years. Tom, everybody knows Tom's story. He probably should have played a lot more ball in Ann Arbor than he did. But honestly, I don't think he would have had the chip on his shoulder and the career that he would have had if it came easy to him at that level. Mm-hmm. That's my opinion. We knew he was special. Kind of hard to kind of stand on the soapbox and tell everybody that when, your quarterbacks played a year tops in college. But, man, I tell you a story. We were playing the one time Ohio State beat us was his senior year, my junior year, or it maybe been his, maybe 98, maybe it was his junior year, my sophomore year. Yeah, I think it was. We go down there, they get up on us. I think they blocked a couple punts, and they had some special teams touchdowns, and they were up on us. First time they were up, had a chance to win in almost a decade. And so that they smelled blood in the water, and they were just coming. And they were if we had 7 to block, they brought 8. If we had 5 to block, they brought 6. Every play they were coming blitzing because they didn't want to let up. And I remember one point Tom got in the huddle and he had blood coming out of his nose and his mouth. Didn't even faze him. And I think everybody at that point was like, God damn, this guy's a man, Yeah. And so when he came into the league and had success early on, I don't think anybody that played with him in college had any bit of surprise. Now, back to your original question, was I surprised that he retired? No. Am I surprised that he came back? No. That's Tom. The way I look at it, if you're having fun and you still love to live it, and your body allows you to love to live it, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, he's a ball player. It's like the old circus horse in the sawdust.
Yeah.
You're meant to be a ball player. You're always going to be a ball player. And you look at options for 40 days, you say, there's no option out there that can replace the adrenaline I have as a ball player.
Especially when you have the passion for it in your body. That's the big thing for me. Your body's, I wanted to play after my 12th year, but my body's like, let's think this one through, and as long as your body's on the same page as your mind, I think you got a shot.
Yeah. How happy were you Jim Harbaugh re-upped with Michigan? He had numerous choices to do whatever he wanted to do in the NFL again. So what's the state of the U of M franchise?
You want a coach to be happy and pursue what he wants and put his whole heart into what he wants to do. Selfishly, I think we're all a little happy. He's built something there in Ann Arbor. He's got that recruiting train going. He's made Michigan relevant again, having made it to the college football playoff last year, and he's got that pipeline going where you see a top 10 recruiting class every year. And so it's something I think we're excited for. We just gotta, we just can't lose to that green team in Lansing, like we did last year.
It's becoming a nice habit. I like it. Winning is a habit, and so is losing. And you just keep rolling. When you see Sparty on the schedule, just circle that puppy and put an L right next to it. I love it.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens. Is it? It's in Ann Arbor this year, right?
It doesn't really matter, I don't think.
Yeah. How about you and I make it up there, and we'll have a couple Heinekens there and watch the game.
I think it's actually in Spartan Stadium. We just
is it? I thought it was in.
We beat you in the big house. You might be right. Yeah, you might be right. Yeah, you were right. You're right. It is in Ann Arbor. Because I went to the game in Spartan Stadium when we won in the fourth quarter. Let me finish with a little name game, and then we have a question from one of our Twitter followers, and we'll end with that. Walter, I'll give you a name, and you a word, a sentence, something that comes to mind. These are guys Very well. Walter Jones.
Best left tackle ever play the game.
Mike Holmgren.
Mike was a guy I have a tremendous respect for. Mike was old school coach. You know, you got out of Mike what you put into it, and Mike treated you the same that way. He didn't treat everybody the same, but he treated everybody fairly, and he was an old school coach that didn't want to hear about the storm. Just bring the ship in, you know. And you knew you found a way to just get it done, because I think everybody in that locker room trusted and believed in Mike and what he could do. And of course, you know, should have won that Super Bowl in 2005. And I tell Cowher that all the time. Played Steelers in Detroit. But Mike is one of my favorite humans.
Matt Hasselbeck.
Yeah, Matt. You know, Matt and I got to Seattle together. He came over. Actually, we're kind of forever tied together. The trade that brought Matt from Green Bay to Hasselbeck also gave Seattle that second first-round pick in 2001, which you know, ultimately they picked me on the 17th pick. And so Matt and I spent 5 years together in Seattle, and then my last year we were together in Tennessee. So Matt's become a really good family friend over the years. You know, his brother lives a couple doors down from me in Nashville, and you know, I'm really close with the Hasselbeck family.
Jerry Rice, for about half a season there, he finished up.
Yeah, so Jerry was again, you know, I played with some great players, all-time greats. I've mentioned Johnny. You know, Jerry was another one. You know, I think that was one of the things, like, you know, Jerry was, even at his age and where he was in his career, that's a guy that when he walked into the locker room, you know, it's funny. Jerry was such a professional that, you know, most guys show up to work, you know, even, you know, nowadays, you know, everything's sweatpants and that, you know, and even when, you know, back, you know, 20 years ago, when you show up to work, you know, you'd be casual, maybe a pair of jeans in the winter and a, you know, a sweatshirt or something. Jerry would show up in a button down and slacks every day. And all he would do is walk right to his locker and take it off and put workout clothes on for the whole day and then put them back on to go to work. And I'll tell you what, you'd start to see guys and receivers in that room, they were starting dressing better to work. You know, Jerry's a guy and that's exactly why I think Mike brought him in. You know, we knew we weren't going to get the Jerry Rice, you know, the Jerry Rice that played with Joe Montana and Steve Young. We were going to get the Jerry Rice who had all that wisdom and would show to work and outwork everybody running routes, you know, even at his age. And so it was a pleasure to be with Jerry, like you said, for that time. And Jerry, I think, made everybody realize, you know, it doesn't matter how good you think you are, what you've accomplished, you know, you still have to show up every day and work.
It's interesting you mentioned Jerry, the way he dressed to work. Another guy that I played with, Chris Dolman, would show up, slacks, a button down, and a briefcase to work every day. I go, what's in his briefcase? You know, I never, God rest his soul. Right. I miss Chris Dolman terribly, and but he was the same way. He would show up, hey, look good, play good. He always would say that.
Right. It's no coincidence that both those guys got gold jackets. You know. Yeah,
you're right. Another guy, big guy, Lofa Tatupu.
Lofa. So I tell you what, they don't make. You know, talking about linebackers, we talked about Butkus earlier, and Dick Butkus defined the middle linebacker position. So Lofa was a rookie. They were into the Super Bowl, and I'm convinced he's one of the reasons. He was one of the puzzle pieces that pushed us over the edge. Came in, I believe he was a second-round pick out of USC. Hit the ground running, didn't take any crap, was humbled, listened to every piece of advice a vet would give him, but played his ass off, put the team first. And the combination of him and Grant Wistrom on that side of the ball just made everybody elevate their game. And even as a rookie, I was impressed how professional he was. And to this day, every time I go back to Seattle and we get together with a bunch of guys, Tobeck and all those guys that live up there, Lofa makes me smile. He's just a great human, and he one of the more football savvy, football IQ, highest IQ football guys I've ever been around.
And you mentioned Tobeck. I know you're good friends with Robbie Tobeck, and I was teammates with him in Atlanta, of course. So Robbie Tobeck.
Yeah, Robbie, he was my presenter. We roomed together on the road 5 years in Seattle. I came into the league. I don't think I have the success I've had in this league without guys like him and Chris Gray, 10-year vets at the time. Self-made men worked their way from the bottom into starters and had great careers. And, Robbie, from top down, from being a father, being a professional, going about your business, I learned a lot from Robbie, and I owe a lot to him.
A few Vikings guys, Brett Favre.
Brett, I'd describe Brett as the oldest 10-year-old in the world.
You were right.
Brett comes in the locker room. His favorite thing to do is take his massive hands, and when you get out of the shower, smack your ass as hard as you can. You'll leave a red mark on your ass for 3 days. He was just, but thing about Brett, it's like he instantly, obviously it's Brett Favre when he comes into your locker room, but he brings a level of energy and love for the game that makes everybody, sometimes locker rooms can get stale, and I mean not stale from the standpoint guys don't like each other, but there's
stagnant. I know what you mean. You mean.
It's like there's no life. It's like everybody shows up to work and everybody's working their ass off and doing that. But when you have a guy that comes in that makes it exciting to be there. Oh, and then by the way, and so obviously, again, 2009, it's no coincidence that Brett comes and we make it to the NFC Championship game.
Yeah, he has the childlike enthusiasm, I would say. Yeah. He was just that wonders, just enjoying the moment and creating magic on the field. You don't know what the hell he's going to do sometimes. And,
no clue.
And that's got to be interesting for an offensive lineman. What are we going to do now? He's scrambling around. Could be an underhanded pass, shuffle pass. Who knows?
You don't know what the hell he does. Yeah. This is one time we were down. We were down in a stance. We were playing. I can't remember. I think it was Baltimore. We're down inside the 5-yard line. We get down there. It was kind of a hurry up thing. We get in our stance, and Brett starts talking. He's trying to figure out if he's going to call timeout, if he can do this. He's like, all right, let's huddle up. Or he's back there, and we've been in our stance for about 35 seconds here. And he's like, all right, huddle up. I'm like, we can't dipshit. We got our hands down for 30 seconds, a penalty if we lift our hands. And he's like, oh, yeah. So he calls timeout. Well, that's Brett. You never know what you're going to get.
Dipshit. That's a new one, man. That's oh, yeah, man. Wait a minute. We got knuckles in the ground. We can't freaking lift them. What are you?
I'm seeing stars. My head's getting – I got all blood resting in my head back here. Do something. Call timeout or I'm going to pass out. One of the two.
Another guy, very enthusiastic guy, probably is going to be in the Hall of Fame shortly, Jared Allen.
Yeah. Yeah, Jared's another, him and Grant Wistrom are real similar, played with both those guys, just guys like Brett. They're like Brett, guys that just bring the energy, the fun to it, and obviously tremendous player.
And Randy Moss.
Yeah, Randy, I've known Randy, for a while and then got to play with him for a month. That was like, that was a blur in 2010. That was, Randy gets, I think, was he with the? I can't even remember where he came. I can't remember if he came from the Patriots or he was with the. Anyway, we had him for a month, and him and Childress didn't really get along well, and we were having kind of a really screwed up year after the 2010 season. I mean, that's the year the dome collapsed. I remember that. I mean, you if it could go wrong, it went wrong that year. So, didn't spend a lot of time in the locker room with Randy, but boy, he makes me laugh.
Yeah, he's funny. I had him in 2004 when I was with the Vikings, and he ended up mooning the crowd in Lambeau in the divisional playoff game. It was nice. It was nice. It was perfect. I loved it. All right, one dude from the Titans, Mike Munchak.
Munch. So my last year in Tennessee, it was a dream, offensive lineman's dream. I had Mike Munchak as my head coach, and Bruce Matthews was my position coach. And so just it's the way to go out. But no, Munch was I always said if I was going to run a team, I'd run it like Munch did. He ran a team like an offensive lineman you'd expect him to, a Hall of Famer, a guy that was all business, smart guy, very good coach. Didn't have him a position coach, but I can imagine what he was like. And how he is still, obviously just left Denver, probably will get a job here, whenever he wants, and be very good there too. But big fan of Munch.
All right, let's close it out with a listener question from Marcus on Twitter. We kind of touched on this already, but maybe just to finish up on this note, he asks, does Kirk Cousins getting an extension mean the Vikings are in a win now mode, or is the organization giving Kevin O'Connell, a veteran quarterback in his first season, to avoid a lame duck year? So is it lame duck or win now?
Yeah, I don't know if lame duck's the right word, because Kevin's going to be there. He's going to get those 3 or 4 years at least to show that he's going to make progress, like we had talked about earlier. I think it's a combination of both. I think with the right system, I think Kirk can do the things you need to do to win games.
Yeah.
And then in the same breath, he's going to give you that veteran who's been in those situations. Regardless of the success Kirk has this year or next year, or it's a 1-year deal, you're always looking for the long-term solution at a position, right? So I don't think that's a knock on Kirk by any means, me saying that, but I think a guy that has the experience, has the skills, has proven to put up the numbers, at least in the regular season, will give you a chance to get to the postseason. I think that all kind of fits and makes sense to why they gave him, the extension.
Well, I'll tell you what made sense is, Hutch, you in your 12 years in the NFL, man, and how you did it, brother. You mauled, you dominated, and you had a nice combination of technique and power, which is a really nice asset to have at the guard position. Like you said, you went after it and got it, and you got it done, brother. And the result is a nice big fat ring that says Pro Football Hall of Fame, a bust that lasts 40,000 years in Canton, and a gold jacket that you and I can spill drinks all over.
Get a dry clean. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not at 4 a.m., but
hey,
who knows? It is what it is.
One of these times. We'll watch the sunrise, sorry. We've already watched the sunset number of times.
Oh, the sunset is not a problem.
Yeah.
The sunset is not a problem, my friend, unless we're going to be in Reykjavik, Iceland.
Where it never goes down.
Exactly.
All right, buddy.
Hutch, I enjoyed it. Enjoy your time in Mexico, and I'll talk to you soon, brother.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on, man.